All right, so I'm going to share a few tips regarding bedside report. I know a lot of times, as nurses, we can be in a rush because, it's the end of the shift and we're just tired. And so just decide that we're going to pack up our things. And as soon as the nurse comes, it's the quickest report we're going to give. But especially for our new graduates, let's just be careful when we're getting a report because sometimes, if we're not getting a good report, it can be a problem for you on your shift. So one, always go to the bedside. I know a lot of times we don't do it, but at least start out, by getting a report at your bedside and see your patients at the same time when you get in the report. So that way you're not in a situation where the nurse hands off a patient to you and the patient is bradycardic or rigor mortis already kicking because the patient died a few hours ago and nobody never realized. Or you don't want it to be a case where, the blood pressure was too high, nothing has been done about it, and then because the handoff has already taken place, it becomes your problem. It becomes your problem now. The doctor is going to shout at you. You're going to have to do reports and all of those things. So at least, based on what is happening with your patient, go ahead and get a report at the bedside. If you hear that the patient is young, walkie-talkie, here for headache sometimes, depending on the type of headache, then you can always run the risk and say you don't have to necessarily go and look at the patient or eyeball the patient because the patient is young and probably is awake and alert in bed. But if you can go ahead and see the patient before the nurse leave, at least you'll be able to say if there's something that needs to be addressed, then you can do it. Just the same thing for you, the elderly patients. When they say that the patient is alert and oriented and alert, go and make sure that the patient is oriented and alert and the patient is not confused or something else is going on with the patient. So in as much as yes, the patient can be walkie-talkie, it is best for you to go ahead and get a report at the bedside where you're able to see the patient. Another thing is always go ahead and check your MAR. Sign on to the computer and look to make sure that medications have been administered, because the last thing you want is to see that 10-15 patients medication wasn't given during the previous shift or the shift that is handing off to you, and now it's going to be your problem. You understand? At least if the medication is not given because of a certain reason, have the nurse go ahead and document it on the MAR why it wasn't given. Is it a case where the heart rate was too low? Is it a case where the blood pressure was just too low? There are so many different things that you can put in the comment section just to make them be aware that it wasn't given because of that. Another thing you definitely want to do is while you're getting a patient, write down the things that are most important that needs to be done on your shift for that patient based on the report that you've been getting. While you're there as well, visualize which patient needs to be seen first. Is it a case where you have a patient who is a walkie-talkie, who had a fall, have abrasion, hasn't been seen by the nurse? Or do you have a patient that is confused on multiple drips, even though the patient was seen by the nurse 5 minutes ago? Do you need to go and see that patient? Or is it a patient that has a fever and it's a child that has a heart rate of 110, but the patient has already gotten cetamol 15 minutes ago? Find out which patient you need to go and see first. And it's not necessarily from the nurse, but based on your critical thinking. Who is the patient that is most important there? Which patient needs priority in terms of being seen by you first? Because of the fact that they are unstable and there's a chance of them, becoming either dead or becoming even worse in terms of their prognosis. So go ahead and just make sure that in your mind you know who is the sickest of the patients that you have, because yes, all of them are sick, but there is one that is the sickest that will kick the bucket faster than any other person. All right, so always go ahead and in your mind always be working on that triage in your mind, prioritize in your mind who is most important of the list of patients that you have. All the patients are important, but there is going to be one that is super important to you at that time. Another thing you definitely want to do is always go ahead and write a little brief assessment as well as the name of the nurse that you get your report from at the time of handoff. So that way, if it's a case where the shift gets so busy and they won't get a chance to document on your patient, at least I can see that there's a note from 7 o'clock or 7:30 or 7:45 to say that when you got the patient, this was how the patient had presented to you, and this is who you got the report from. Because especially sometimes we have some nurses who are not in the habit of assigning themselves, meaning clicking themselves, their names onto the patient to make it be aware of. And if you don't have that time stamp there to say the patient is assigned to this person from this time to this time, then later on if something do happens and you need to get a nurse's name to say, oh, this was the person who had the patient prior to you handing off. At least you'll have it in your free text somewhere along there to say that this is who you receive the patient from at the time, you know. So it's always good to do that, because, you know, people do have issues later on and you might not be able to remember everything, and so whatever it is that you document at that time, you can only go by with it. You understand? While you're in the room taking your handoff, just scan your room in the meantime. Scan your room in the meantime to see that there is an ambu bag, the wall suction is working, all of those things. So write down whistle in the meantime, because you don't want it to be a case where something is happening in your room and you never get a chance to stock out your room because it was so busy. But at least 1 and 2 little items you'll be able to go ahead and grab and just go put in the room in the meantime. So in the event that something happens, it is there for you. You understand? So don't let it be a case where you have to go through and do like big stocking when it comes on to your room. Simple things. If you see something missing, just go ahead and grab one and put it there, replace it. So that way, you know, by the time you're ending your shift, you're not feeling as though your room is very, very empty, because, you know, you never get a chance to stock up on anything for your nurse that is coming on. Because both shifts, day and night shift, regardless of the amount of patients that we see on them, they're always going to be busy. The nurses are always going to be busy. So I know lots of times we say that night shift is not so busy and so we get a chance to stock the room. Day shift is the same thing. When you're wiping down your room and, you know, taking out your patients extra items that were left there, feel free to just go ahead and grab 1 and 2 little blood pressure machine, cuff, or whatever it is to just replace in the meantime. So that way, by the time at the end of your shift, you know, your room still has supply that it can work with for the next nurses that are coming on. All right, another thing when it comes on to bedside report is always have a little notepad, because that will help with keeping you organized as well. That is something that I love to do. Even if I don't have a notepad, I just go ahead and just have a little sticky note and put it on my computer, so that way I can be reminded of things that are important. Always go ahead and ask questions at the time of the bedside report, because at that time you're going to be able to ask any amount of questions that you can regarding what is happening with the patient. Because remember, not everything we document, we chart by exception, and so a lot of things that probably you would have wanted an answer for, it might not be charted because the nurse probably don't think it was important. You understand? But in order for you to have a good report, so that way in the event that family members do show up and asking certain questions, you'll be able to answer it. All right, so I do hope that these are some tips that will help you. There are so many other things regarding bedside report that are important, but for now I'm just gonna leave these. If I do have anything else to add, I will definitely do another video and just share it with you. But in the meantime, go ahead and make sure you're practicing good bedside report. Get it from the bedside, ask your questions, document, and in your mind prioritize who needs to be seen based on the report that you're getting, and then from there hopefully you'll have a smooth shift. All right, and as I say, if you don't ask questions and if you don't have the nurse address things that were supposed to be addressed on her shift, despite the fact that nursing care continues, you know, then probably you might be the one that get to write the report, or you might get shouted at by the doctor because you're calling regarding something that should have been addressed hours ago. But no, because you just received it, you know, you're gonna have to deal with it, and so it might start off your shift badly for you, because no, everybody's upset with you because these are things that should have been done by the previous staff but wasn't done, and no, it's your problem. But anyways, you know, as you go along you will realize and you will learn. But always try to get good bedside report, because this is very important. And when it comes on to your license and saving it, if you get good bedside report, that will help as well with you protecting your license. All right, I do hope these tips were important to you. If you like the content, go ahead and just give the video a thumbs up. And remember to follow me here on TikTok and YouTube as well at Think Nursing, where I share longer form content as well. Until then, I will see you in the next video. Bye.